What's up, NFL fans? Welcome back to another episode of the NFL Whip Around, Week 4 in the books. Two hosts are same as always. I'm Jeff Hartman, joined by Coach KT Smith. What's up, Kevin? How are you?
I'm doing great, doing great. I caught a little bit of what you posted on Twitter of you and Stats, and he
Yeah,
was wearing his Victory Monday shirt. And
it's all he ever wears.
is there like an equivalent for Steelers fans, right? Is there a Misery Monday shirt? I don't know what the equivalent is, but
Well, at the Steel Curtain Network shop, we have a Fire Canada shirt. Is that the equivalent?
that's gonna be a bestseller by Wednesday.
We've sold some. Let's just put it that way. We have sold some of those shirts for sure. But Steelers aside, the NFL was in full go, obviously in week 4, and it was a weird week. I mean, you saw a lot of offensive ineptitude, not just in Pittsburgh, but with other AFC North teams in particular. You saw some very questionable coaching decisions. We're going to talk about a lot of that here on the NFL Whip Around. Look, if you want a game by game analysis, go back. Check out the Fans First Football show that you referenced, Coach, with myself and Rob Stats Guerrera. That ran on Monday. Today on Tuesday, we like to look at some key topics and storylines surrounding the National Football League as we go into the next week, which is week 5. Let's start off the top with the best team in the league. Okay, so who was the best team in the league on Sunday? So let's talk about this week. So who was the best team this week? But then I also want to ask you a follow-up, Coach, which is after 4 weeks, almost a quarter. I know it's an odd number of 17 games now, but after almost a quarter, like who's the best team in the league right now at this juncture? But let's start with Sunday. Who was the best team in your opinion?
Yeah, for me, it was Buffalo. I just feel as though they almost took that Miami hype train personally. The Bills have been the class of that division for the last few years, and everybody knows about what Miami did the previous week, the 70 points and the 700 yards and all that. And they went up to Buffalo, and I just thought that the Bills were not only prepared from a schematic standpoint, but also from like an emotional standpoint. That stadium was so loud. Sean McDermott said it sounded like a jet engine inside the stadium. Josh Allen, he's playing great football. He was great on Sunday. I think he was 21 out of 25. But it was interesting because you think about Josh Allen and you picture him launching these bombs all over the field from these ridiculous arm angles and things like that. But he was just kind of like an efficient Josh Allen throwing short passes. I think of his 25 throws, 23 of them were under 20 yards. And he just kind of managed the game, and then they just turned that defense loose on Tua. I mean, Tua got hit. Like he has not been hit all year long, and they hit him. They sacked him 4 times, and they hit him a bunch of other times. And I think it's easy to forget how good Buffalo is. I mean, they've now scored 37 points or more in 3 straight games. I think that was only done once last year in the entire league. So when they get rolling, man, they're among the best in the league, and I thought they were great yesterday.
They were great. And I think that it's also a really important facet of this matchup that it's a divisional game. And so you can have Miami hang up 70 on Denver, and you can have Buffalo struggle against the Jets. Divisional game. Like they're common opponents. They know how to play one another so well. I'd never thought that the Miami Dolphins offense would kind of get shut down the way that they did. But at the same time, the Buffalo Bills know this Miami offense. It's not going to be a shock to them. They're going to kind of understand where to go and how to handle it. You mentioned the pressure they put on Tua was a great game. I do question though, and Coach, I'll give you get your take on this. The one thing about Josh Allen that seems to be a little amiss at times is his consistency. He'll have games like the one we just saw on Sunday, where at one point he had more touchdowns and he had incompletions. And then he'll have games, look at week 1, where he's turning the ball over at a ridiculous clip. Is that just who Josh Allen is? Or is this going to be kind of the new trend in having a more consistent product?
I think that's who he's always been. When he came out of college, that gunslinger reputation, a lot of people talked about him like a young Ben Roethlisberger. And his rookie year was, I don't want to say a disaster, but he really struggled with managing the football, and his completion percentage was low, and he threw a bunch of interceptions. And he's obviously gotten way better at that as he goes, but he lapses back into that at times. I think they really managed the game plan yesterday to try to be ball control, keep the ball away from Miami. They didn't allow Allen to take a ton of shots down the field. And again, he's boomer bust when he does that. He can look spectacular. When he throws a deep ball, it's as pretty as anything you see in the league. but he can also make some bad decisions, like you said. So they really, I think, catered the game plan yesterday to a more conservative approach, and they still put up 48 points. So I think that Buffalo is scary when Allen is probably doing a little bit less, and
Yeah.
they're scary when he's doing more, but they can also be their own worst enemy in those situations too.
So Buffalo is going to be a front runner in the AFC. We knew this heading into the season, but I want to ask you the follow up that I mentioned before we even got to this topic, which is after 4 weeks, who's the best team in the league right now? And a lot can change. I understand that, but 4 weeks is a little bit more of a sample size. What are your thoughts in terms of the NFL's best team after this stretch of games?
Yeah, for me, it's the 49ers. I just think they're the most complete team. I just think what they do up front on both sides of the ball, combined with their coaching staff, uh, the diversity they have on offense, just with the way that they can move guys around, McCaffrey and Kittle and Samuel and those guys. They can beat you in a bunch of different ways, and they don't always have to play their A game to win, because that's when you can fall back on running the football with a dominant line on both sides of the ball, stopping the run on defense, running it on offense. It takes away a lot of pressure on your quarterback. So for me, I just don't feel right now as though there's a team in the league that's more complete than San Francisco.
It's hard to argue against that. It's hard to find a team, like you said, like, that just seems like they're clicking on all cylinders, and then you look at, like, Christian McCaffrey, well, he's just doing Christian McCaffrey things. Brock Purdy is just seems like he's the perfect quarterback for that system. Tough to disagree. Let's talk about a team that had a ton of expectations placed on it heading into 2023. Maybe you can point to the unfortunate calf injury to Joe Burrow. Obviously, we're talking about the Cincinnati Bengals. Topic number 2 in this whip around is what is wrong with the Bengals? They lose. They only put up 3 points. Interesting stat that Rob talked about on Monday's show is that they are the only team, I think, in the NFL that has not scored a first half touchdown yet this year. I mean, think about that. Not just first quarter, not just opening drive, an entire half of football, they have not put up a touchdown. What is wrong with the Bengals, coach, in your opinion?
They have there's some mind-boggling stats associated with that offense right now, and I know Rob and Dave Schofield, they're the big stats guys.
Yeah.
But when you look at some of them, like three total touchdowns on offense this year by the Bengals, and I mean they're averaging the lowest points per drive of any team in the league. They're averaging the lowest points per drive through 4 games of any team since 2019, and that's incredible. I think that the big thing is twofold. One, obviously, Burrow's injury has limited his mobility, and one of the things that makes him so effective is just his ability to find space in the pocket. He's not a runner per se, but he's really good at being able to sort of slide and move within the pocket and get to some open seams where he gets a clean sight line down the field and then make plays. And calf injuries are tough because like they really limit your ability to push off. And when you're a quarterback in the pocket and you're trying to sort of slide and move into those open spaces, you need to be sudden. And with a calf injury and not having that explosiveness, it really takes that away from Burrow. And then defenses have responded in the in really the sort of survival of the fittest way that they do by blitzing the heck out of them. Right?
Yeah.
And Joe Burrow's completion percentage against the blitz has really declined. It was 69% 2 years ago, and last year it was 59%. And this year against the blitz, he's only completing 51% of his passes. And so by heating up Burrow and trying to confine him to the pocket and understanding he can't move real well, they've just taken away the explosive element in that offense.
Let's also talk about the offensive line. You mentioned about the blitzing schemes, but I mean, this was supposed to be a group that got better this past offseason. The banner signing was the big signing was Orlando Brown Jr. being added. They're not keeping the pass rush off of Joe Burrow, and they're not making his life any easier. I mean, when you think about it, their offense has really become restricted to shotgun passes. He's got to make his first read, second read, and the ball's got to be out. Well, a lot of that is also not just because of the calf injury, but the offensive line coach. Is a lot of this also the guys up front not doing their jobs to keep him upright?
Yeah, and then when he gets that pressure in his face, he doesn't get comfortable. It doesn't let the
Yeah.
routes develop down the field. He's 2 for 22 on the season on passes that travel more than 20 yards in the air. Like, that's awful, and that tells you that either the calf injury is limiting his ability to push off and therefore his accuracy, or with all that pressure in his face, he's just having to throw the football under duress and before routes develop. And then you flip it over and you look at like the defense. I mean, they're not without their own blame. I mean, they've given up 35 explosive plays. And that's tied with Denver for the most in the league. I think 30 of Denver's explosive plays were against the Dolphins 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So it's like the defense has given up home runs, and the offense can't create those explosive plays. And you put those two things together, that's a recipe for disaster.
Well, they let both of their starting safeties from a year ago walk in free agency, and Jesse Bates and Von Bell. Like that's going to have an impact. But let me, before we leave this topic, I want to ask you a simple question. We don't know the extent of the injury. It's not a ruptured Achilles tendon or anything because he wouldn't be able to play at all. That's obviously what Aaron Rodgers is dealing with as he recovers from his injury. We're talking about a calf injury, and I'm not going to downplay that. But, Coach, can we honestly say that when you bring up some of these statistics for Joe Burrow, that all of it could be on a calf injury? Like, I'm sorry, like I grew up playing sports where throwing was obviously a necessity, and I can't say that everything is going to be thrown out of whack. Maybe not practicing and playing in the preseason. Yes, I can understand attributing to that, but at some point, like you just got to make the plays, right? Or am I just out of left field here?
No, I think you see a little bit with Cincinnati right now. What you see with you and I as Steelers fans, we watch their offense. Teams are not afraid of the Steelers beating them down the field in the passing game. And so they get more aggressive and they tighten things up. And I think you're seeing some of that in Cincinnati. As to why that is, that's hard to know. I mean, Jamar
Yeah.
Chase and that receiving group in Cincinnati, man, they should be able to worry some defensive coordinators that, man, if I press those guys, we're going to get beat over the top. But that's just not the case right now. So the Bengals obviously have not been able to figure out an answer to what defensive coordinators are throwing at them. And now it's in their court, man. They got to. It becomes sort of a scheme battle. You have to figure out now what your counter move is, and they just don't know just yet.
Definitely going to be interesting to see if the Bengals can bounce back. They are 1-3 right now. They are in the bottom of the AFC North, which was not a big day for the AFC North, but we're not going to get into that. So let's talk about the next topic here on the whip round, and that is our favorite coach to criticize and to talk about, and that is the LA Chargers, Brandon Staley. He does it again, and I will say this: at least he sticks to his guns. Yeah, I got to be honest. Like when he goes for it on 4th and 1 at a critical moment in the fourth quarter against a division rival, I have to feel like his players knew like he's going to go for it. Like they would probably be stunned if he sent the punt team on, but he goes for it and he fails. The game on the line. We've seen this from Brandon Staley before. What are your thoughts on his decision making?
He's not going to deviate. You're right. I mean, that man's married to his metrics, and I feel as though the defense can look at that in two different ways, right? They can look at that as like, what is this guy doing, right? The positions he's putting us in. This is 2 weeks in a row now with the game on the line and the Chargers ahead by a touchdown or less than a touchdown. That he's going for it in his own territory, and they failed on both situations. But both times the defense has responded. They've gotten interceptions uh, at the goal line or in the end zone on both drives with the opponent's offense inside the 10-yard line. So they can look at that and just be like frustrated and say, "Oh, what's this guy doing to us?" Or, and I'm going to guess that this is more so the case, he's essentially made his intentions clear. They know what to expect, and that when they fail in those situations, the defense simply goes onto the field and says, "All right, now it's on us. Next play." Yeah, I think we mentioned this a little bit last week, but like I don't have any problem with it if as a head coach or an offense coordinator that the defense knows that, hey, we might put you in a tough spot, but we're going to do so within the framework of what we think is best to win the football game. And if we fail, then it's on you. And if the defense can rally to that, then so be it, right? And the guy's won 2 games, and he's
Yeah.
won 2 games in his own way. So we can criticize if we want, but it's worked out for him.
You talk about the messages that are being sent to your players. I firmly believe in that in my time as a head coach. I'm sure you do as well. And that goes all the way up to the professional ranks. Let's talk about another coaching decision and what that communication, what is he saying to his players? And that's Ron Rivera of the Washington Commanders. Okay, so the way that game ended against the Philadelphia Eagles, Sam Howell drives the team down the field. It's a remarkable play. Dotson scores. You are a 2-point conversion away from winning, or you kick the extra point, you go to overtime. I'm sorry, but when you you just drove down the field and you almost have this miraculous play. No one's giving you a chance in this game anyways. What is the message being sent to the offense that I don't trust you from a play from the 2-yard line to win it? Instead, we're going to kick an extra point, hope that we win the toss or that we can stop the Eagles, get the ball back, drive down the field, all those other things that would have to happen. What is the message sent to the offense when Ron Rivera holds up the singular finger and says, we're just going to kick the extra point?
I mean, my personal philosophy is that when you're the underdog and you're on the road and you get to a situation like that, you go for two because you have the momentum. The Eagles were clearly stunned. I mean, they literally scored.
Yeah.
Washington literally scored the touchdown to tie the game, or put them down by one on the last play of regulation. And you've got them back on their heels. And if you got a 2-point play you like, then I think that's you go for it. Now, who knows, man? I mean, sometimes so most teams will have a script of 2-point plays that they want to carry into a game. And it's not extensive because how many are you going to really run? They might have 3 2-point plays that they really like. But you might run those 1 or 2 of those earlier in the game. Like if you don't see yourself needing all 3 of them, you might say, hey, we got a 4th and 1 here, and we're going to run a 2-point play because they're designed for those situations. So it's possible that Ron Rivera looked at his call sheet and maybe they didn't like any of the 2-point plays that they had on there in that situation. Maybe they'd already run them. There's a lot of variables that we don't know. But as a rule, I really think that that's a scenario where you go for it because Philly's the better team. And the longer you play, and they're at home, and the longer you play, the more it favors the Eagles. You've got the momentum. You just scored. The Eagles are on their heels. Let's try to end the game right now.
That's my thought too. And some people will say, and I said this on my Monday show with Rob, some people will say it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario. I don't agree with that. Not when you're on the road, not when no one's giving you a shot, not when you're going against a team that was the NFC representative in the Super Bowl last year. And you, like you said, you have them on their heels. If there's a time where most fans are going to say, if you go for it and don't make it, I totally get why you went for it. And they're not going to there's always going to be Monday morning quarterbacks. Let's get that out of the way. But still, the vast majority of the fan base is going to support the decision to go for the win and not hope all those other things happen. I just think when it comes to the messaging that you brought up when Brandon Staley, like, look, the defense, I might put you in a bad situation. The message to Sam Howell and that offense is, I don't trust you to get 2 yards to win the game after you just drove down the field against the NFC champions last year to put us even in this position. It just doesn't sit well with me, Coach.
I guarantee you, if he had turned around and polled his team, they would have wanted to go for 2. I remember a game we played in college. We were on the road against the number 3 ranked team in the country in the, I mean, it's Division III football, but they were still, they're a big powerhouse team. And we were down 28-14 in the 4th quarter, and we came back and scored with 9 seconds left to make it 28-27. And our coach called timeout, and he gathered the whole team, not just the offense. He gathered the whole team on the sideline, and he said, what are we doing here? What do you guys want to do? And like unanimously, everybody said, let's go for 2. And we didn't get it. We didn't get it. And then we had an 8-hour bus ride home, and we lost 28-27. But there wasn't a single disappointed kid on that bus. Everybody on that bus understood, like, man, we're here let's win the game, man. Let's win the game right now. So I would think, yes, that there'd be some guys on the offense in Washington who were disappointed yesterday.
I'd rather go down swinging. I've always said that. I'd rather go down swinging than hope that the coin toss and everything else goes your way. Try to dictate the game. But hey, everyone has their own philosophies. For someone that has the moniker Riverboat Ron, he sure didn't roll the dice. That's for sure. All right, let's go to our next topic. And it is a guy that's been doing it really at a high level for a really long time. Christian McCaffrey. Like, this guy is just, everyone says, like, oh, you can't draft a running back in the first round. You shouldn't draft a running back in the first round because you have all these other examples of second, third, fourth, or even later, sometimes even undrafted players who are making really good impacts on their team. But then there's a Christian McCaffrey who was a first round pick and said, well, if you get that guy, you're not going to complain about spending a first round pick. Is Christian McCaffrey, in your opinion, good enough to be a league MVP or at least in that consideration after 4 weeks?
Absolutely. I saw somebody on TV yesterday or Sunday talking about how he can't be the MVP because he's a running back, that it's a quarterback league and that the MVP is a quarterback award. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. The impact he's made on San Francisco since he arrived. Now, they were a good team before he got there. But since he's gotten there, they've been an elite team. They've gone 14-2. And the two games that they lost were, one was his very first game there against the Chiefs. And then the other one was the NFC Championship when they didn't have a quarterback, when they lost both their quarterback. He ended up playing some quarterback in that game.
Yeah.
So it's hard to really fault them for either one of those. Otherwise, they've won 14 straight regular season games, and they've been fairly dominant in doing it. And he's kind of the catalyst. I mean, since he's gotten there, they've been first in overall success rate on offense. They've been second in offensive EPA, which I think is a really good statistic. I mean, I'm not a huge stats guy, but I think that's a really good statistic. I mean, he leads all running backs in the NFL in explosive runs over that time. I mean, they're a different team with him. And I think if they go on to win the NFC and he continues to play at this level, how do you not put him in the top two or three guys in that conversation?
Do you think in today's modern era of NFL that a non-quarterback has any prayer though of winning? Like he would get votes if he keeps up this trend, but do you think, I mean, it seems like it's been eons ago since like Adrian Peterson, I believe, was an MVP at one point. Do you think that's still even a possibility, even though the numbers that you just said are definitely worthy of being the most valuable player for their team?
MVP is still a sports writer's vote, right?
Yes.
Okay, well then no. I don't think he has any chance. Because I think sports writers love quarterbacks. Love it's the most obvious thing. It's the thing that like it's the easiest to talk about because everybody's got an opinion on the quarterback, and it's the running back position is being devalued. And a guy like McCaffrey, his value doesn't always show up in the most obvious way. Like you say, oh well, how many yards rushing did he have? Oh, he had 86 yards rushing. Well, that's a good day, but that's not an MVP day. But then you look at all these other things that he did. Or then you look at the really nuanced stuff, like what's the defense have to do to account for Christian McCaffrey that makes life easier for other guys? I mean, you really have to, given all the ways that San Francisco uses him, you have to have a very distinct game plan for him in your offense. That's now going to allow the 49ers to operate well elsewhere. So I think his impact isn't as obvious, and therefore it makes him probably less likely to get that vote.
Which is a shame because he's having a hell of a season. He's a hell of a player. He had 4 touchdowns in the game yesterday or on Sunday in week 4, just dominant. And it's crazy what San Francisco, we talked about them already being the best team after 4 weeks. It's crazy how they're doing it with just a handful of guys. It's him, Brandon Ayuk. I want to say that Rob said on the show yesterday that the 49ers only had George Kittle and Deebo Samuel had 1 touch in that game combined, and they still put up over 30 points. And it's just crazy. It's a great scheme. Christian McCaffrey's the perfect back for that scheme. I can't believe we're going to talk about this next thing, but we are, because why the hell not? I mean,
Yes, come
here we
on.
are, the NFL whip around, 2 sports guys that love the game, and we're going to be talking about Taylor Swift. Good Lord. Okay. You wanted to talk about this, Coach. Let's talk
I
about
did.
it. Is Taylor Swift good for the NFL? She's been all over social media, not her, but just pictures and the talking points. And she was at Kansas City last week. She was in New York to watch the Chiefs play the Jets. What are your thoughts on old Tay Tay?
You probably saw some of the statistics, right? After that game 2 weeks ago in Kansas City, Travis Kelce's jersey sales went up
Yeah.
400%. The Chiefs got 300,000 new Instagram followers. That is a massive impact.
Yep.
And my cousin, who knows nothing about football, she knows nothing about football. She's 25 years old and she's never paid attention to a sport in her life. She responded. She actually sent me her response. Somebody put on Twitter a picture of the Philadelphia Eagles offense, and it was a photograph, a still photograph shot from behind the Eagles. And you saw the backs of center Jason Kelce, quarterback Jalen Hurts, and running back DeAndre Swift. And they just highlighted the names, and it says Kelce, Hurts, Swift. And that was it. They left it alone. And they just posted it on there. And there was like 3,000 comments. And my cousin commented, he better not hurt Taylor Swift. if he hurts Taylor Swift, and it was like she was going off. And I mean, the NFL's got to be loving this, man, because whether this is like a couple week phenomenon or whatever happens, they're drawing in a entirely new audience. And the NFL's already done an amazing job of marketing itself in so many ways to really like non-football fans, whether it's the Super Bowl or fantasy football, which I know lots of people who aren't real football fans play it because it's interesting. The anime thing that they did, the Toy Story thing that they did with the London game on Sunday, that probably drew in lots of people just for the curiosity of it all. So I would think that the league sees this as a great opportunity to reach an entirely new audience, even if it's only temporary. And some of those people they may convert into real football
Yeah, I
fans.
mean, I don't know. The Swifties are crazy, and now all of a sudden Travis Kelce's all over the place. He's on my TV with insurance commercials, and he's doing commercials for Big Pharma, and he's on with Patrick Mahomes on State Farm commercials. Like, man, this is insane. How these had to be done well before all this stuff came out, but still, it's just like these two entities are just completely skyrocketing north. Really weird. I don't have much of a thought on this, to be honest with you. Of course, the NFL is going to try to capitalize on it. I don't blame them for trying to capitalize on it. Anytime you can bring in a new demographic to your product and hope that a few stick around, even if it doesn't last, yeah, you're going to try to do that. I don't fault the NFL at all for Sunday Night Football having a camera that's just fixated on Taylor Swift. So anytime they want to go to the box, like there's a camera, like you're just staying there. I get it. I don't necessarily I don't like the fact that the NFL's trying to do all this stuff, but it is what it is. Like the Toy Story game, I'm just not a fan of that. The slime time crap that they do on Nickelodeon. Like when I was a kid, a coach, it was probably even worse for you. There was none of that. Like I was intrigued by the physicality of the game. I was intrigued because my dad loved watching football. And I used to love watching NFL primetime with Chris Berman and TJ as they did all the nicknames and the monikers. And Chris Berman was in his prime with a whoop and all that stuff. That's what drew me to the game. I didn't need a first down chains or a slinky dog from Toy Story to get me interested in the game of football. I don't know. Like I get why the NFL is doing it. I understand it. But to me, I guess I'm asking what is wrong with a product that shouldn't be enticing for the young adults anyways. That's my only beef with that.
It's a different world, man. Young
It
people
is.
have so many forms of entertainment, so many things to keep them amused that the NFL has to try to sort of compete with things that you and I, we didn't. I mean, man, you know how it was. I'm older than you. When I was growing up, we had like 12 channels, 13 channels before
Yeah.
cable TV hit when I was a little bit older. And whatever game they were showing, that was the game. And you didn't have any alternatives. There was no Sunday ticket. There was no, opportunity to see anything else. And you either liked it or you didn't. And most people did because I think the culture was also a little bit different too. But things have changed for sure, and the demographics are different. And I just think about my students who I teach. Right there are some diehard football fans in there, but I can't really bring up the game of football and hey, everybody watch the Eagles game on Sunday. And you'd have, 20 years ago when I was teaching, 90% of the class would say yes. Today, that might be 25, 30% of the class. It doesn't mean football's in decline. It just means they're doing stuff.
I also think it's interesting because I've got years of teaching experience as well with the young demographic, and I would always see kids at the beginning of the school year. They come walking in, and I obviously live in Maryland, so they're wearing a Ravens jersey, and I'd always strike up a conversation. Oh, you're a Ravens fan? Yeah, I love the Ravens. Blah blah. Well, the next time they come in, and this has actually happened. I swear, I kid you not. They're wearing a TJ Watt jersey. Like, what the hell are you doing? Like, you can't do that. Like, you're wearing a Ravens jersey. The next day you're wearing a TJ Watt. That is like oil and water. Those two do not mix. What are we doing? What are we? Well, I don't know. And then next day, Jamar Chase jersey. He's on my fantasy team. I'm like, do you like a team or not?
That's bad
Like,
parenting right there. I
that is.
attribute that.
Hey, you let your kid be a Lions fan. I don't want to hear it. So
That's a smart move right now, man. We're the
right now,
stupid
yeah.
ones rooting for the Steelers. Come on.
Great point. Point taken. But no, it's definitely a different dynamic with fantasy football at a young age. Kids don't have the loyalty to a team as much as they do players. They like individual players. They'll support those players. And yeah, Travis Kelce's going to have a lot of fans now because he is somehow romantically involved with Taylor Swift. It's just weird, but at the same time, I guess whatever. That's fine. Okay,
2023, baby.
let's let's talk about the last thing, the player profile, which we always highlight. Obviously, we've had Brandon Ayuk. We've had other players that have played great last night, Sunday Night Football or Sunday night. Uh, Pacheco, the running back from Kansas City, just went off. What are your thoughts on him for your player profile, coach?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about him just because of a personal connection and yeah, I go back to 2014. Our high school team is we're playing a game at home on a miserable night in early November at the Jersey Shore, which is just cold and windy and wet. And we're playing Vineland High School, which was a nearby school, and it's a slugfest. And it's like we're winning. I think we're winning like 12-7 in the late in the fourth quarter. There's about 5 minutes to go in the game, and their freshman quarterback uh, they have a running back that they've been playing who's a freshman, and they bump him over to quarterback. They get the ball on their own like 20-yard line, about 5 minutes left, and they go into a wildcat. And now the freshman running back is playing quarterback, and all they're doing is running sweep and power. They're snapping him the ball, and he's either running up the middle behind a pulling guard, or he's running around the end behind two pulling guards. And we can't stop it. We know exactly what they're doing. And this kid is running like it's his reason to be on this earth. He is running as hard as he can. He is relentless. He's breaking tackles. He's a freshman and he's about 5'10" and about 165, 170 pounds. And we just can't stop this kid, man. And they go sweep power, sweep power, sweep power all the way down the field. And they score a touchdown with about 30 seconds left. And they beat us 13-12. And that freshman was Isaiah Pacheco. And I just remember, like, after the game, shaking hands with the kid and saying, that was a heck of an effort on your part. And he was no bigger than me, man. He was smaller than me. Um, and then, I learned a little bit of his story. We have friends who live in Vineland. And I mean, really, really tough life growing up. Lost his brother, lost his sister, grew up in a gang area, had an awful lot to overcome. And it's those stories, right? You get to see like these young men who overcome these situations. You're just happy if they make it out of that environment. And Pacheco winds up going to Rutgers. No football, it's not a football factory, and you're thrilled for the guy because you think, hey, he made it to D1 football, but he's not going to really go any further than that. And then he gets drafted in the 7th round, and you think, oh, that's awesome, man. He got drafted in the 7th round. Maybe he'll catch on with the team. And not only does he catch on with the team, but he becomes the starting running back for a Super Bowl champ. And then Sunday night in prime time has 158 total yards, and just like you just say to yourself, man, like these are the feel good stories that you're just so happy to know a little bit of the backstory and be able to just celebrate the hard work and the accomplishments of young men like him. So anyway, I wanted to give him a shout out because I just feel as though from where he's come, what he's overcome, what I saw of him personally and who he is today, that young man is doing fabulously for himself.
It's those stories which are so phenomenal about hard work, dedication, stick to itiveness, whatever you want to call it. That should be highlighted by the league. And instead, we're inundated with Toy Story and Taylor Swift. So there you go.
Yeah, it's a fair point. That's a fair point.
Yeah. I would much rather hear about his story and how he overcame such glaring odds. But that's just me. Maybe I'm a little old school. I don't know. But that's a great story. Thanks for sharing that, Coach. Hey, before we wrap up, what's coming up on the call sheet? Why don't you let the listeners know?
Well, we're going to expand a little bit on Brandon Staley. We talked a little bit about him today, but we're going to use him as a kind of a jumping off point for a broader conversation about how metrics and statistics are really driving a lot of coaching decisions in the league today. I mean, more and more teams are really starting to game plan and make in-game decisions around the numbers, which is an interesting thing, I think, because there's two ways really to look at calling a game, and one is sort of your feel, and the other is the data. And we're seeing a new generation of coaches who are gravitating more towards the latter there. And then obviously we'll we'll continue just to talk about the league. There's some fascinating stuff going on right now. The separation in quarterback play, the high end quarterback play is as good as I think we've seen it in a long, long time. And the low end quarterback play is pretty bad. So it's an interesting separation there. So those will be our main topics.
Awesome. Let everyone know where they can find you on Twitter.
Yeah, KT Smith FFSN, and that's the call sheet runs on Wednesdays, and I've been putting up some stuff on Twitter lately, just kind of looking at some coaching decisions and some schemes. So follow me if you get a chance.
Fantastic stuff. You can also hear him on the Steel Curtain Network, which is where you can also hear me. Anywhere you get your podcast, search Steelers or Steel Curtain Network, you'll find our feed covering the Pittsburgh Steelers. Make sure you check out all of our shows on the FFSN NFL feed. If you want to follow me for some odd reason, you can do so on Twitter at jhartman, HARTMAN_PIT. Coach, thanks for your time. We'll talk to you next week. Take it easy.
Yes, sir.